Oh, hello there. I was just researching a couple of different topics that can be found in this encyclopedia. You know what Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power. Now what do you do when you want to find information about something? I would assume that the majority of you use the internet as your central research tool. However, before your time, the encyclopedia was the main source of information for many people. It was a revolutionary creation that allowed people to access knowledge by simply turning a few pages. The encyclopedia has since evolved from a volume of books to a vast source of internet websites that are more convenient and more specific. Some people argue that the internet makes it too easy for today's youth and doesn't allow them to develop important skills. However, I believe that if Diderot, the editor of the French Encyclopedia, was alive today, he would be amazed and in full support of internet encyclopedias. After all, the encyclopedia was intended to educate the common person and provide knowledge to the masses. Isn't that what the internet does? But that's a story for another time. To learn about the origination of the encyclopedia, we will have to take a journey back to the 18th century. I hope you'll be able to join me. The origination of the encyclopedia is quite a story. In 1728, the British published Ephraim Chambers' Cyclopedia. However, it neglected anatomy, history, and geography. In 1745, the French arranged to publish Chambers' Encyclopedia, but a misunderstanding with the translator arose and they were unable to. This turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it led to one of the greatest creations of all time. After the misunderstanding, the French decided to produce an extended version called the Encyclopedia, also referred to as the Dictionnaire. Dennis Diderot was named chief editor of the project. He was also the expert writer on economics, mechanical arts, philosophy, politics, and religion. Jean-Laurent d'Alembert was also a large part of the encyclopedia's production. He was in charge of science, mainly mathematics, as well as editing. Other contributors included well-known minds of the Enlightenment such as Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu. The work covered the ideas of machines, technology, tanning, printing, and other trades, medicine, anatomy, astronomy, chemistry, electricity, and many more. In the midst of working on the project, Diderot was briefly jailed by the French government because of his liberal views in 1749. Then, after the first two volumes were published in 1752, Diderot was attacked by the Jesuits because the work attacked organized religion and religious miracles. As a child, he was actually educated by the Jesuits, but refused to enter one of the learned professions. He eventually ran away. The Encyclopedia was a profoundly revolutionary document. It boldly told the average man that he could know what only kings, emperors, and their lieutenants were supposed to know. It suggested that anyone should have access to rational truth. However, the idea that information should be available to everyone was not very popular with the French government, which led to their unsuccessful attempts to prevent it from being published. The Encyclopedia also discussed issues of a constitutional government as well as political and religious authority. It showed people the weaknesses, flaws, and corruption in French government and church. The work played a large role in the initiation of the French Revolution, which occurred 17 years after the final volume was published. The main reason it was able to be so influential was because of something invented in 1440, the printing press. Johann Gutenberg was born in 1398. He was a goldsmith and created one of the most influential inventions in history, the printing press, which was developed in 1440. The advancement in printing brought about a practical revolution in the way books were produced and knowledge was spread. Printing was available before 1440, but it was extremely difficult and time-consuming. The Chinese were thought to be the first printers. They developed paper and ink and were able to print by the year 868. Because of the labor of making a book prior to the printing press, they were very expensive. Peasants, which made up most of the population, had no access to books and because of this, didn't bother to learn to read. The printing press not only helped spread ideas, but it helped spread literacy. By the time of the Enlightenment, literacy had dramatically improved thanks to the printing press. With increased literacy rates, the Encyclopedia was able to have an influence on French society. Without the printing press, the Encyclopedia would not have been able to be mass-produced. Perhaps then the French Revolution would have never occurred, and history would have been dramatically altered. Diderot was the philosophical equivalent to a performance artist. He was very outspoken about all of his beliefs. He usually set up conversations between characters, as can be seen in his work Rameau's Nephew, to get political points across. Somebody who had observed Diderot's work described him as being in possession of a restless, original mind that threw off ideas. Being in charge of one of the greatest documents of all time, Diderot was able to write whatever was on his mind and be sure that many people would have the opportunity to read his opinions. Now, the Encyclopedia played an important role in the intellectual ferment leading to the French Revolution. The 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica wrote, "No encyclopedia has been of such political importance or has occupied so conspicuous a place in the civil and literary history of its century. It sought not only to give information, but to guide opinion." While many contributors to the Encyclopedia had no interest in radically reforming French society, the Encyclopedia as a whole intended to. The Encyclopedia denied that the teachings of the Catholic Church could be treated as authoritative in matters of science. The editors also refused to treat the decisions of political powers as definitive in intellectual or artistic questions. Some articles talked about changing social and political institutions that would improve their society for everyone. Given that Paris was the intellectual capital of Europe at the time, and that many European leaders used French as their administrative language, these ideas had the capacity to spread. And they did. From the time of its origination until the mid-1990s, encyclopedias everywhere had not changed much. Of course, new companies emerged, more information was added, and existing articles were revised, but that happens with almost everything as time goes on. However, in the mid-1990s, the relevance of encyclopedias began to dramatically decrease due to the internet. The internet provides an almost unlimited amount of knowledge at your fingertips. So, much like the phone booths, VHS tapes, and telegrams, encyclopedias slowly became obsolete. We can credit the internet to the first idea of encyclopedias, which were intended to compile as much information as possible into one place. The Encyclopedia, with much help from the printing press, was a revolutionary document. Not only did it set the tone for the French Revolution, but it set the tone for future encyclopedias and eventually the internet. I hope you all enjoyed this presentation and were able to learn something new about encyclopedias. Thank you.